the Australian Leadership Project and Victor Purton. And today I am delighted to be joined by one of the world's and Australia's great innovation thinkers, Rachel Audige. Rachel, welcome.
Thank you, Victor.
Rachel, the first question we like to ask each of our guests is, tell us your favourite story of a leader or a boss in your life.
I had to think about this one, Victor. I've been very fortunate with my bosses. I've had some terrific ones, very supportive. In fact, I've been very spoiled. There's one that came to mind, and it's just a short story. But I had been working in New Zealand in the New Zealand Trade Development Board for quite some time in Paris, and I had a terrific boss, and I was shifting as you do from I was evolving as a manager and as an employee. And I can still remember a moment when my boss called me in and sat me down for my review, and had taken so much time to think through how I was changing, evolving, growing, and said, I've watched you move in the last few months from a tactician to a strategic thinker, and then detailed all the different things I was doing and how that was shifting and so on. And I was blown away with the attention to my evolution, with the ability to articulate it, and just with this beautiful moment of where I felt that someone was able to, I don't know, maybe just distill what had happened to me. And I had felt it happen. So that was for me a really beautiful moment. Just someone who can sit you down, has taken the time to think through and watch you and see you evolve, and is excited by that growth. So yeah, that was one of the many terrific stories I can recall back in my first job.
That's fantastic. In fact, Dominic Barton from McKinsey's, in fact, says that is the kernel of great leadership. Not only to be positive in your own leadership, but to generate that in other leaders. In fact, Margaret Gardner, the Vice Chancellor of Monash University, talked about the first two leaders in her life and a very similar experience. Rachel, core of our exploration is the qualities of Australian leadership. You've lived and worked globally. You're living in Australia. What do you see as the unique elements, the key elements of Australian leadership?
Australian leadership at its best. So I think we have shifted as a country. I was out of the country 20 years, as you've just mentioned. I think we've shifted in many ways, and we've lost some of the frankness and some of the direct side that is so essential, so quintessential to the Australian psyche. So what we look for in a leader, and the best Australian leaders have retained that. They've retained that earnesty. They've retained that ability to make you feel included, help you feel that you've got as much chance as they do to be sitting in their seat. So then that way, a certain degree of consultation, but not too much. So some sense that they've got the balls to make the right calls and so on, and initiative, and that they're not, that you're not making you can't pull one over them. I like to respect my boss. But at the same time, that sense that they do actually care about what you've got to say, that you can contribute. And that later on, as I say, you could be sitting in their seat.
That's actually brilliant. And I will reflect more on your comment that we're losing some of that no bullshit authenticity, which has been a crucial part of Australian leadership, and one of the things that endears us overseas. And that probably takes me to the...
Sorry, Victor, just on that, we're very good when we are overseas. But I believe we've kind of confused the mateship notion with we need to agree. To be mates, we need to agree, and we've lost that. If we had it, I think we had it, that delight in debate that maybe other cultures have more of. So I think we need to really watch that. We don't have to agree to be getting on. And in fact, I don't believe in like-mindedness. And we talked about this first time we met.
I know that again, your brilliance, it's breathtaking, Rachel. Just Thank you for that, and bringing that wisdom to bear. Um, so, again, I mean, the thing that mystified me coming back to Australia was, this is one of the best countries on earth. Our living standards are extraordinary, and yet there's this public sentiment of resentment against our leaders in government, in business, in NGOs. And I'm wrestling with this, and that's the core of this project. So what do you believe Australians want of their leaders today?
I think we need vision. I think we need vision, but not the kind of cut and paste vision that we're seeing organizations do. Let's have a vision and mission statement and so on. We need someone who really is aspiring to something and is able to transmit that. And something bigger, and I'm not talking either about a monetary goal, something that we want to become as an organization, and that we are leading to in a fairly purposeful sort of way. So I think that notion of a vision, someone who's visionary and someone who then puts the resources around it, and is consistent in sort of setting everything up in the ecosystem to take the organization there and take the individuals there. So vision for me is super important. I think I'm a third child of four, so I'm going to have to mention fairness. Fairness is very important to me, but I think, a sense of fairness, a sense that we are the fair go country, but I think we're very, very dialed in, and maybe it's my own bias, but we're very dialed into being given a fair go. Now, I'm a woman, but without even going into that sort of as a woman, as a man, as a person living with a handicap, whatever, I think we want a sense that there is a one rule for all. I think that's very important. I think generally we try to apply that, but we're certainly looking for that, and perhaps even more than ever, with all the superb work being done around inclusion. A sense of opportunity, definitely. I mentioned before that sense that that there isn't a ceiling, but with that, and I'd kind of coupled together with opportunity, realism. So we don't want to be promised something that isn't possible either. So I've had bosses who've sat me down and said, I think it's time to leave. You're going to get frustrated here and things like that. Now, that's also positive, unless it shows a lack of imagination, and in that case, I don't believe it did. I think it can also be a positive to be able to be real, but at the same time see where the opportunities are and offer those opportunities. So they'd be big ones for me.
Oh, thank you, Rachel. Now, thinking about your own life, and as you say, it's been very much a global life. Who have been the leaders in your life, and who has inspired you?
So many. Do you know the first that came to mind? I don't know whether you've ever done this river of life, a beautiful exercise that I did many years ago. But I once traced my river of life, and I looked at the big boulders, and I just imagined my life as this river, and who were the big boulders, and where were the turning points, and what had grounded my values, and so on. Terrific storytelling exercise. And two of the big leaders very early in my life were teachers. And in both cases, one was Shana Morocci here in Bayside, another was Nikki Pickering, a superb teacher at North Sydney Girls in Sydney. And in both cases, they were women, but that's accidental. They could have been men. But they were passionate about what they were bringing. They inspired respect and hard work. They brought out this hard work in me. Almost in spite of myself. I wanted to, not please them, but I just felt that there was an expectation that I was able, but also an expectation that I would. And so I did, And so they were terrific. These were terrific teachers. In terms of bosses or leaders, I've had some CEOs in France who cared about the business, who were visionary, who had some of those qualities I've mentioned. Sometimes I've had the good bloke leaders who people just trusted. There was an incredible trust in them. Now, sometimes they winged it. Sometimes they weren't the best in some of maybe the other sort of disciplines you might expect from a boss. But we knew they were earnest, true, and that when they said something, we trusted it. and they'd walk the floor and make each person feel as though they mattered. And these things make a difference. And you could watch the impact on them walking the floor and see that someone who was just sitting in their cubicle or their open space, whatever they were sitting, would light up as they just had the boss spend 2 minutes with them. These were important things, and they understood the power of that, and not in an egotistical, narcissistic way. They just understood that they needed to touch base with their teams. So they're really important. There's one other quality that I particularly value, and that is someone who can articulate something to me. So I do look for that in a boss. If they need to tell me I've done something well, poorly, that I need to redress something, whatever, I need them to be able to tell me that. And maybe not everyone is a wordsmith, but I need them to be taking the time to find the words and trying to work out what my language is to get that across. So that ability to get across an idea clearly is extremely important to me. And I've had many bosses leaders and bosses who've been able to do that.
And that inspiration that you talk about in them, I mean, just clearly reflected in your own answer. Rachel, you've always come across to me as an optimist and someone who's optimistic. Can you tell me what makes you optimistic, and what would be your case for optimism for the other people in the Australian community?
Yeah, well, very personally, I have thousands of reasons to be grateful. So I feel very, very fortunate in my life with beautiful family and health and so on. So I think it would be shameful if I were not optimistic personally. But beyond that, I have stepped out of beautiful many years in corporate as an entrepreneur in marketing. I've stepped out and I'm working with a method that is intrinsically optimistic. And two things about it make me, on a daily basis, work with people in that sort of way. And one is that we are working with a method where we are looking at what people have and not what they don't have to innovate. So we're saying, you are richer than you think. Let's take a different sort of search engine through the things and the resources you already have, which I think is extremely optimistic. There's stuff in there with a different search engine that you can use differently and you will get some terrific results. That's one thing I think is really powerful. The second thing that for me gives me a lot of optimism is that one of the most powerful resources they may have may be their biggest problem or their biggest threat. And that I think is amazing. So I'm working with people to flip their thinking around what might be they might be butting their head against. And you can just imagine how exciting that can be. And even if I can't always hit the root cause of a problem, sometimes I can break the pain somewhere else with the sort of work that I'm able to do with systematic inventive thinking, which is the method I'm working with. So that is exciting, and it still fires me up. And it's exciting. Yeah, it's exciting to take that into any business.
Oh, that is so exciting. I spoke on the Optimistic Leader to a school children's audience in Shepparton last week. And again, the optimism clicked, just to see these young people actually say, I am the leader, I've got authority. There's no they, the solutions are with me. So look, tell me a little bit more about this systematic inventive thinking. And the people who've been inspired by you in this interview, how can they get a little bit more of it and perhaps utilize you to help unlock their creativity and innovation?
Thank you. Well, thank you for that opportunity. I think very, very briefly, what I'm working with is an Israeli method that came about through a couple of academics 22 years ago. And they were, instead of looking for the randomness in creativity and innovation, they were looking for patterns, and they found that there were patterns, and in a way they kind of cracked the code to innovation. So they saw there were 5 templates to the best ideas, and their premise, the hypothesis was, if we plug them into anything people are working on, a process, a business model, a product, a service, then logically they're likely to find some really good ideas coming out of this. So we do that, and very importantly, when we plug this into their box, inside their box, working with what they have, we're breaking a bias that is often holding us back from innovation. many of us get into a sort of default mode when we're thinking we're smart. I'm always working with smart people, and their smarts is sometimes shooting them in the foot because they've got default thinking about the stuff that they're working with. And so sometimes you need to shake that up and come in and bring these templates and think differently about the resources they're looking at every day. So that's what we're doing. Systematic inventive thinking. I'm here in Melbourne, bringing this method to Australia, working with any industry. The method is absolutely industry agnostic. And one day I'll be working in oil and gas, and the next day in the banks, and then another day in insurance, and so on. And small and large. It seems to be just thinking that everyone is embracing. And what's beautiful too is it sits very well with other methods that are out there. And ultimately, my goal is to no longer need to talk about innovation. To be out of a job, as so many people say cutely, but in a way it is, to be out of a job, although I'd be very sad. But really to get people to a point where they are able to just build up their own tool set and mindset to think differently and draw on that when they need it. So that's what I'm all about. It's systematic inventive thinking, SITS, www.sitsite.com. And my name is pretty easy to find. I think we're the only ones in Australia. So Audige, Audige.
Absolutely fantastic, Rachel. I've come away energized from this conversation, and I don't think you'll ever be out of a job. I think that the pursuit of innovation goes from Melbourne to Kazakhstan to Iceland. So you'll always be in demand. So look, thank you so much for joining us today with the Australian Leadership Project. And for those of you who've watched this and been inspired and want to share your wisdom on Australian leadership, please visit our website, australianleadership.com, and I'm always ready to talk to you like this, or to do it over the internet, or any way you feel you can join us. Rachel, thanks again. You are an inspiration, and best wishes for the path ahead.
You are too, Victor. Thank you. It's a beautiful project. Thank you.